stay with, and this is intentional. I wanted to end with this music and kind of a light conversation, but some very serious material within as well. So I would like to introduce our final speaker for today, Tou SaiKo Lee, who is a hip-hop artist, storyteller, and spoken word poet from St. Paul, Minnesota. He is currently a graduate student in the master's program of Southeast Asian Studies at UW-Madison, which is in our program. And his focus is on Hmong indigenous identity of Southeast Asia. He founded Street Stops and Mountaintops, which connects teaching artists and organizers from the U.S. to work with Hmong students in villages and orphanages of Southeast Asia. He received the Bush Foundation Leadership Fellowship in 2016 to focus on research of the Hmong diaspora, including communities in Vietnam, Australia, China, and Thailand, of how Hmong use traditional and contemporary arts as effective ways to revitalize culture. He released his first Hmong language hip-hop album titled Unified Worldwide Summer of 2021. And he was selected as a featured speaker by TEDx of Minneapolis in 2021 to speak on his current initiatives. So there's a TED Talk by Tou SaiKo out there. Finally, his talk titled Reclaiming Cultural Identity and Language Through Hip Hop can be found on YouTube. So you can go to our website and click on various links that he has and see some of his work there. But now I would just like to turn over the room to Tou SaiKo and let him give the final presentation for the day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So just to clarify, the Bush Foundation was not George, and it was not Anheuser. It was Archibald and Ingrid, who were philanthropists in the Midwest here. So they give out leadership fellowships within the Dakotas and Minnesota. But I will definitely get into that as far as that goes. Before I start, I just wanted to ask who here has lived in a different part of the world? Raise your hand. Okay. Where did you live?
I lived in Dubai for 10 years.
Okay. Who else? Sorry. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Taipei, Taiwan.
Taipei.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you?
I am from Puerto Rico.
Okay. Who has lived in a different state other than the state that they're living in? I think most people are here from Wisconsin, right? Where?
I lived in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay, Illinois. Back here.
Kansas City.
Kansas City. Okay.
Minnesota.
Minnesota? Oh, okay. Minnesota. Okay. So, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I went to school in Massachusetts.
Okay.
I was on the East Coast.
Yeah, that counts. Yeah.
New Mexico.
Mexico, thank you. So, for this first piece, I want you to think about countries, cities, states. Yeah, countries, cities, and states. Because when you're just gonna listen for them, and then after I'm done, you can let me know what you heard, which cities, states, and countries you heard. Okay. And this is an a cappella verse, meaning without a beat. Okay. We are the refugees. We are the refugees. We are the refugees. Degrees, rise, destiny, double easy. Repping our community, we breathe in two languages, anguish, anger management. Rock like heavy metal, our music is heavy mental. Inspire the instrumental, retire from the desire to light up my last pencil. Yo, shout out to all the poets up in the house. Shout out to all my people in the jungles of Laos. This tragedy, tragically, before us had to be recorded. Always wanted a country, we could never afford it. Inspired by survival, we will never forfeit. Yo, the mind expands from the camp to Thailand, Syracuse, and why. With the blink of an eye, I rise from Twin Cities, rapping the mic. Frogtown, Mississippi, down Totem Town, I picked up a mic. Picked up a pen, cause pencils were not allowed. Consider the weapon. Consider the savior. The truth travels in the ink scarred onto my paper. So many families severed as the former gang members coming back for the positive we got to uplift. Thank you.
Wow.
Alright, so What did you? So just one, okay? City, state, or country that you heard.
Syracuse, New York.
Syracuse and why? Thank you. Twin Cities. Thailand.
Laos.
Okay, we doing the hand raising technique. Okay, process here. Okay, Laos. Okay. All right, thank you. So I think, wait, was there any? Okay, Laos, Thailand. I think that was most of it. And then there's Frogtown. If you have been to Minnesota, there's this area called Frogtown, and that's where a lot of the, let me just say, for generations, there's been various cultural communities, but now it's known for a lot of the Southeast Asian refugees have created their own business district called Little Mekong. And so there's a lot of Southeast Asian restaurants there and markets and businesses and nonprofits. And now it's including a lot of new cultures too. So, I forgot. All right. So I just want to reference that before we go into this, because when I was a young person growing up in Syracuse, New York, before I went to Minnesota, and I'm actually going to go through all these countries through this presentation, I realized, or I found out my cultural identity in 3rd grade when another student asked me, "What are you?" You know, I'm like, what? What do you mean, what am I? He's like, what are you? Like, are you Chinese? And I was like, oh, no. So I asked my mother, like, what am I? So my mother said, you're Hmong. And so then I didn't know what that was either. And that's when I learned the first information that my mother taught me was that we are people that have survived war. We are refugees. So one of the initial identities, besides being Hmong, is that we were refugees. And that was really important to me for the rest of my life, really. Really shaped my worldview after that. And not having a lot of role models. So going from Syracuse, where there was very few Hmong people, I was the only Asian student at my school, to Minnesota, where that's one of the largest Hmong populations. I almost felt behind all the other Hmong students because I couldn't speak Hmong that well by that point. And so I would, go and, when I was going, as an undergrad, I would go into schools and do these artist residencies because I was getting into the arts. I didn't have any role models, so I wanted to help out. And initially I was volunteering to go into these schools and teach about writing. And it was not just Hmong students, there was students of all different cultures, to help them express their identity through writing poetry and lyrics. And why I use hip hop, it was, to me, growing up, I never thought I could be a hip hop artist or a rap artist, but they were artists I looked up to. Initially it was artists like Tupac Shakur, and then artists that were more political, like Dead Prez, and now there's artists like Kendrick Lamar, who I see as sources of inspiration. And for me, I saw it as I wanted to represent my stories through hip hop because I was inspired how they represented their stories as African Americans, as Black Americans in this country. So there's this rebellious nature that Hmong people relate to, that of disenfranchised youth, especially growing up in neighborhoods like Frogtown, that I related to. So that's how I caught on to hip hop, but I always felt like it was important to express it as, to inspire young people through that art and express cultural identity. So that's how I got into hip hop. Alright. Well, my parents were actually married in this refugee camp in Thailand. So they're from Laos. Because of the secret war that happened, my parents escaped the secret war into the big refugee camps within Thailand, and Nong Khai refugee camp, which is one of the areas, provinces, and city in Thailand, is actually where they got married. And I was born in that refugee camp, but I was only 8 months old when my family left and came to the United States, so I do not remember anything from the refugee camp. But to me, that was also very significant that my parents were married and I was born in a refugee camp. And going into what I study now, like looking into my history and doing research in Southeast Asia, this picture, which is actually, another picture was used from Dr. Yang Dao's book, The Turning Point, earlier with May's presentation. But this is actually my grandfather from that book, the one in the white. I don't know why I think he was the leader of his platoon, but I was really interested why he's wearing white and everyone else isn't. But so his name is SaiKo, which is my middle name, and he passed away during the war. So my father was only 10 years old when he passed away. So, and even before that, before my father was born, he was actually already recruited into the war, into being a soldier. And then, while he was growing up, my grandfather continued to just visit once in a while, and then eventually passed away when my father was 10. And to me, how that connects to trauma is, I realized that my father, well, he was a very angry person growing up, and I never understood why, but I was also upset at him for being so angry. That's one. And then second was, he didn't teach us a lot of culture and language. We say Hmong because, and these are actually really important for roles for Hmong men, especially when your children are getting married or funerals. But it's because when my grandfather passed away, my dad was they were treated like they were orphans, and his brothers. And so then a lot of his uncles didn't really teach him that much, and then he felt disconnected. So a lot of the language and culture we didn't actually get growing up, which does connect to what I'm studying now. So, and another thing about hip hop that was really inspirational for me is how we call it flipping the script, or a lot is about reclaiming words that are used to marginalize people, like that are from poor communities. So like hood or ghetto, there's like stereotypes of being poor, being committing crimes, being violent. But this is an artist, J. Cole. He said there's beauty in the struggle. And to me, my interpretation of that is, even though they've grown up in those areas, there's a beauty in overcoming it, coming from that, and understanding that struggle that you come from, and having that be something that empowers you to be successful. And then for immigrant and refugees, and these are terms that I feel a lot of Hmong people wanted to reject, because we actually have both identities, because we grew up in those types of neighborhoods, as well as we were refugees. But they're saying aliens, others, uneducated. But what I learned from my parents' stories as I was doing research and asking them is, there's a lot of strength and resilience in being refugees, in overcoming it, and coming to this new country, learning a new language, and becoming educators, becoming leaders in community, and artists. So this is just one of the quotes. You see, as refugees, we were told to keep running. If we stop, we die. And this applies to the rest of our lives. These memories will exist in tattoos, tapestries, and the broken down bodies that feed our families. It's the refugee mentality. And for me, that means you just keep moving. Because when I hear my parents' stories, they said, you keep moving, just keep going, or else you're gonna die. And to me, the way that I see it as a metaphor for my life is to just keep moving and don't stop. Keep trying to achieve our goals. And so, and then I met my grandmother, who came later into my life. My mother actually said, a lot of Hmong children grow up with their grandparents because they would go to work. Like they would say the mother would work during the day or the father would work at night. And then the only people that could take care of the children were the grandparents. So then the children would actually learn Hmong from their grandparents. But my grandma stayed back in Laos, but my father sponsored her over when I was 17 or just going into actually graduating, go to college. And actually, that's actually when I started my journey of learning Hmong, because I wanted to, like, in Hmong we say, like listen to her stories and her poetry, and that's what really got me connected to my culture, was through my grandmother and conversations with her and learning about her poetry. Eventually, she came to one of my shows, my performances, and she waved to me backstage, and then when I went up to her, she said in Hmong, "Oh, you know what you do is similar to what I do, even though I don't understand what you're doing or you're saying in English." And I made that connection that this is a continuation of this oral tradition and that we should collaborate, right? And so Grandma and I would collaborate for 10 years. We were called Fresh Traditions. Oh, there it is. All right. I was like, where'd it go? Can I play this? Oh. Oh, it's a video, but it was like a really short video, so I just wanted to show everybody, but if not, it's okay too.
Let me see if I can bring it up here for you. There you go.
Thank you.
Sure.
So when I point my finger to the sky, everyone's gonna do Ya Shangna. Okay, ready? Ya Shangna. Yeah, like that. So. So watch for the finger, the good finger, the good finger. Okay, watch for the good finger, and then. Take go ahead. Okay. Lost in translation, our language is fading. Displaced in this cave, we engage with the mountains and breathe in the clouds. And we from Vandal travel in spirals and follow the sky flow. Adapt to the pyro, survival, denial, demise. The high road hill tribe will never die. We will never die. We will never die. Like John Todd said, we are the orphans of time. Orphans of coffins endorsing the times. Orphans of coffins endorsing these rhymes. We are the orphans of time. We are the orphans of time.
refugee, tất cả chẳng chi muốn yêu trong chi cầu DJ phù hoa phóng chú ý play dù hip hop phá dẫn nhưng cho nhẹ nhàng tầm lòng chú chi nói ya họ DJ họ MC họ baby boy họ global yo cụ tây chỉ mua kiến đề yo cụ tây chỉ tao cho chơi yo cụ tây chỉ mua kiến đề yo cụ tây chỉ tao cho chơi.
Thanks. That's Grandma and I. And I wanted to reference that snippet of the video. It's me thinking about cultural exchange because, especially being in this country, growing up in neighborhoods where we share communities with the Black community, for example, and we're actually learning about hip hop. And I'm fortunate enough to have mentors who were from various cultures, or indigenous mentors, Black mentors, Latinx mentors, and they, taught me about hip hop, and I said, this is my contribution. I'm going to explain what the history of hip hop through the Hmong language. So that's what that song is about, actually explaining the history of hip hop through the Hmong language, because I wanted to teach where it came from. And so, cool. All right, so let's go next. This is from one of my students when I was going around in the schools. Emily Lee, actually this is a few years ago, so she is actually just started her first year as a freshman at a university. But when I visited Park Center in Brooklyn Park, I would help them create their own spoken word pieces, and this is just a snippet. And so I wanted to make sure, it says, get a grip, start to ask questions, wonder why, who, what, when, how, or else our culture will die. Go on to your parents, their first step, learn, and their history, the wounds on their back. If they don't want to talk, ask again, change their minds. If you have to keep trying, start the conversation. If you can start the conversation, there could be a revolution, a revelation, a realization that you need to get a grip, and to do so, and so do the hundreds of the next generation. Change your mind, change their mind, save the legacy your ancestors left behind. Cool. Yeah, give it up for Emily. She's not here, but you know, that was a great point. So those are just pieces, and like I said, I've worked with other cultures too. So there's a lot of different students from different cultures. And that's the basis of a lot of the work I've done before I went to grad school. And I wanted to just, for the last few minutes, transition into where I'm going while I'm in grad school and what I plan to do after I graduate. Because a lot of this work is healing and thinking about mental health and how that has affected a lot of communities, and really understanding those differences. So as some people, you know, as we all know, like, it can improve self-esteem to understand your culture and express your culture creatively. And then this is really important for me, and I know this is something that's taught, and this is actually what I learned while working in partnership with many K-12 schools, is this idea of acculturation, because we think about assimilation as something where we are rejecting our culture. But acculturation is we are carrying our culture and continuing to be successful in this country while carrying our culture with us. And that's something that is really important for the students to understand, that they're not just becoming American, but they are bringing their culture as they become an American. So, and then reconnecting to their elders in the diaspora. And for me, when I understood that fellowship, that we had relatives that lived in Australia, in Vietnam, or in Thailand, and Laos, I really wanted to visit those places around the world. So when I visited Australia, southern China, Vietnam, and then there's Thailand too, I just didn't put it up there. I did a presentation at the Hmong Studies Conference, probably 7-8 years ago. And I talked about this idea of being indigenous. And I actually, because the largest Hmong community, or one of the largest Hmong communities, is in St. Paul, and Minneapolis actually has one of the largest urbanized Native American communities, and is where AIM started. There was a lot of inspiration, like some of the elders, actually an Ojibwe elder actually stopped me once in Minneapolis when I was walking to class and said, "Hey, do you know you're indigenous?" Or he asked me if I was Hmong. I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You know you're indigenous?" I was like, "Oh, no, I didn't." And then he's like, trust me, you are." And then when I was leaving, he said, "Remember to make sure the youth remember where they came from." And I was like, "All right, cool." And then 8 years later, I'm studying indigeneity in Thailand, so that elder was right. So I really wanted to explore that, and that's where I met Ian, because Ian was presenting at that. Ian Baird is a professor at Southeast Asian Studies Center for Southeast Asian Studies too. And that's how I got into the research, and then also thinking about indigenous education. There's actually a lot of inspiration from groups here. There was this Hmong Indigenous Educational Symposium in La Crosse, where Hmong and Indigenous educators came together, called Winding the Circle. And then there's a school in Fond du Lac that's an Ojibwe school that does a lot of experiential learning with their students. And a lot of Hmong educators were starting to understand and get inspired by some of these resources and indigenous ways of teaching. And when I say Hmong educators, I mean those who are teaching Hmong language and culture and history within schools that have those programs. And I really was interested because, you know, I've been teaching through arts, and I wanted to really make these connections with arts and indigeneity. So, for me, I actually learned a lot of my language through songs, through repetition, through pronunciations, through asking elders what our certain words are, and then incorporating them into my songs. And I really wanted to continue emphasizing that. And I did get inspiration from indigenous hip-hop artists who were also revitalizing their language through hip-hop songs. Like Tall Paws, an Ojibwe artist from Minnesota, who was rapping in Ojibwe that inspired young Ojibwe youth. Ojibwe youth. And so, an experiential learning where, especially this school in Fond du Lac, we're doing, like, they were helping the youth like build canoes, traditional items, or the youth were learning how to do it while they were learning about these items. And I see that, like, in Sheboygan, they're actually having me, collaborating with me to go into the community and have elders and youth work together, like my grandma and I. So a lot of my grandma's legacy, or that of us performing together, continues to inspire future generations. And I should mention that she passed away in 2017, but that collaboration is still, people still ask about it, which is amazing. And I think that to continue honoring her, we continue doing these collaborative workshops with elders and youth. So elders that already have like skills in poetry and music, then having youth learn spoken word or other type of arts, and then having them collaborate just like my grandma and I did. And so that's kind of a new project that we're working on. And then when I talk about, and then going into agricultural practices, like Bayview is actually a housing area that has a lot of elders that still do farming, so that's a way to engage with elders. But decolonizing historical perspectives is, to me, it's one of the great things that I learned was understanding the qualitative methods of research, and that we can definitely reference historical documentation, but then understanding how do we be more critical about who wrote it and where it comes from, and how do we value the oral tradition from the elders and incorporate those into our research as valid forms of research too. So let's go to, keep thinking about, okay. I am going to just I'm just gonna talk about this. I'm gonna send this video out, but this is my aunt and I when I was in Thailand. So she lives in a village in Thailand, and she was teaching me how to do this Hmong poetry called Gutsia, and she was doing a process of repetition, because my grandma didn't actually learn how to read and write, or she didn't have the opportunity to go to school, so she learned through repetition of just listening. And then she also improvises her poetry. So I thought, wow, my grandma can freestyle too. And that's actually the name of my memoir that I'm starting to write about my grandma after she passed, was My Grandma Can Freestyle. And so this is actually a process between my aunt and I, where I'm learning from her. And just my goals is to continue the arts, but then also being able to explain the value and how does it actually help students improve. And so it's not replacing, of course, it's just complementing, supporting the curriculums that exist by using music, by using arts, using experiential learning. That's one. Another is just to continue that process of intergenerational collaboration, having elders be a part of the process of learning and having them come and teach. And continuing to go deeper into research and helping other young people do their, encouraging them to do research too, and go international with their research. So they are becoming, successful as Americans doing their research, but they're also going back and understanding that part of their history in Asia. So those are things that I hope to accomplish after grad school. So, thank you. Any questions?
Was that last slide a video?
Yeah. Wait.
Can we watch it?
Which video? The one before. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can.
Here, I can, might be easier for me to do it from here.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is her doing her beats here. Yeah, so it goes from my grandma to my aunt. Two of my aunts.
Để cho nó có từ vào.
Cú xã nữa cú xã.
Ồ, có sáng đó.
Có xã kia ít món cái từ của hai xã.
Để cái một picture trong đó có sáng thôi.
Ê, thọ này thì có hai nó trên mặt xã thế này.
Vậy à? Có nhiều khó sáng rồi. Để ôi giờ cái thiên gia cá tàu mà. Để cơ
yêu xã thì nó còn nó chỉ hai thiên rong nó chứ.
chịu chạy cái thiên phải nó có lư tiền. Thọ, giờ đi thọ có hai đô. Có khó khăn xe đó là thay à. Cái thứ chỉ tha từ đã bây giờ. Ôi giờ cái thiên gia cá tàu.
Cú xã kia lại gì của hai xã. Cú xã im gì im mỏ tới để cô ta chỉ hai lấy xã chỉ cho hai.
Chị cũng xa có cho cái xe, có ra cái xe. Để có nhiều khổ.
Cú xã cờ lo cái kia tao.
Để chị thọ sức thể của tao ô lý cha của tao mong có.
Cú hai ý lử ó lử ta chị. Đấy lử chỉ có hai là của cá, lử có chỉ tha hai là của cá, in chỉ có mà lên hai. Có mà của hai ta chỉ có hai là cá.
แต่chị cũng yêu cũng chỉ tao hai cái xe ý rồi.
Nhiều biết hai nha, có chỉ tao hai đôi ý rau lý mà có yêu từ hai cho. Có từ số hai. Có chỉ số hai, có yêu từ hai đó cũng nông, sẽ có giống nông cho, có mà hai gắn nông á.
Cái gì?晓得是吗？甚至我还不到。
Cái mua nhà mua chỉ dụ là cái chỉ mua nọ mua chú hai bảy.
Cái mua nhà
Mua nhà mua chỉ là cái chỉ mua nọ mua. Cái mua nhà mua chỉ dụ là cái chỉ mua nọ mua chú.
cái mua nhà mua chỉ yêu là cái chỉ mua nó mua chú. Hai đâu. Cái chỉ đó là mua đâu. Cái chỉ đó là mua. Cái chỉ mua là mua.
Chỉ mua.
Cái
chỉ mua chẳng đợi là ô tết rồi.
cái chỉ đó là mua đâu.
Cái chỉ mua tết mua chân.
Cái chỉ mua tết mua chân.
Cái chỉ tàu kế mua đó là cả kia.
Hay gì?
Cái chỉ tàu kế mua đó là cả kia.
Cái chỉ tao kế mua đó
là cả kia.
Đó luôn.
Cả kia.
Cái kia.
Cái lò nhậu nên thời.
Đây là nhau uốn nên thời chờ.
Thời uốn để thời kia.
Thời chờ uốn để Thao chia,
เธอเทีย
thao thia.
เออ
Ồ.
นั่นเราเหลือหรอ
Thì cụ tôi ra cá chờ lù nó bây giờ. Thì hai đi là tao nó.
จะชัวร์ได้หรอ
Ồ.
ชัวร์น้องไม่ได้แต่แค่
Ờ.
เดี๋ยวไปมัวเนี่ยมัวจีอยู่
Bị một niệm một xí yêu.
ไปจีมัวเนาะ
Thanks. Yeah, I forgot. I should reference that. That's 10 years ago from 2011. I was part of a film called We Rock Long Distance by an ethnomusicologist named Justin Schell in University of Minnesota. So he documented 3 hip-hop artists who were living in Minnesota through 3 different parts of the world and then weaving their stories. So there's me in Thailand, Maria Issa in Puerto Rico, and Manifest in Ghana. And so that's what that documentary is from. So. But you know, I'm just a regular grad student, just to let you know. That's why I tell all my fellow students, because they're just like, who's this guy? He's a little bit older. But yeah, that is the process, and I just wanted to make sure I said that I do want to teach the language and the culture and history, but not as just a regular, or I shouldn't say regular, a regular school teacher, but more as a specialty school teacher that comes into schools and helps with that. But I do also want to help create, because there's a lot of cultural exchange. I mentioned indigenous people, I mentioned African American, and I feel like it's important to help create these models and share with other communities too, once they're established. So I do want to help share these models once they're more established. Thank you. Yeah.
You say share these models, so can you talk about sharing these models with kids and students, college students? Like how does the model function for them?
Yes. Thank you for asking that. I meant like a train-the-trainer type, where I help